Today on the pod,
Esther Fallick,
comedian,
writer,
actress.
And beautiful.
So beautiful.
I spent a lot of my 20s trying to control what people thought about me, right? And what I realized when I realized I was a woman, I cannot control anymore what people think about me. And so when I started doing stand-up, that came at a time when I was like beginning to understand the full extent of what losing this control was like, and it was really overwhelming. But when I would go on stage for 3 to 10 minutes, I did have a little more control over how people perceived my transness.
Hey. That's how I've been starting every episode.
That's really good. Hi. Oh my god.
Oh my God.
Here we are.
Here we are. And
Here we
are. Welcome to
Yeah.
Glass Slipping. We have a very iconic special guest with us today.
Oh my god.
We're here with Esther Fallick.
Hi.
Comedian.
Comedian.
Icon of the time.
Icon of the times.
times.
Kind of voice of a generation.
Yeah,
That's
sort of.
what
That's what people have been saying.
That's what I've been saying.
That's it, and you've been
people
saying
have
that.
nodded.
People
So,
have nodded.
yeah.
People haven't
nodded
been
along.
contesting
Yeah.
it, which means
Exactly.
it's correct.
No,
Means
no
they
one's
probably
saying
agree.
you're wrong. So
No.
that must mean that you're right.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're very lucky to have you today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here after, should we let them in on all the
You can let them in.
crazy?
Mhm.
Originally, you reached out to me in like October, and I was like, I would love to. I just got a pussy.
We're just lucky to have you.
Yeah, we're so
I'm
glad
lucky
you're
to
here
be
now.
here.
I know
So lucky to be
that
here.
that surgery, that recovery was nuts, right?
It was so wild.
How long did it take you to recover fully?
So I'm like still, I guess, technically kind of like in the, well, like recovery is like a year. Like I'm currently still like, there's like daily things I do, you know?
Yeah.
But I was basically in my apartment for like 2.5, 3 months.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Did you just have people come visit you?
Yeah.
That's nice.
That was the nice thing. It's like I had all these really intentional visits with people where like they'd get on my couch, we'd get high, and then they would be like, I would be like, tell me everything that's going on because I need to feel a part of things,
Yeah.
Also a beautiful reason and excuse to get people to come to you, always.
Oh my God.
Incredible.
It was
Yeah.
so
That's
nice.
really
I
nice.
milked that as long as I could, but now people know I'm leaving the house, and so
So now,
I have
yeah,
to.
Now they're aware.
Yeah.
That is really wild.
Yeah, but I basically had my own little COVID quarantine, I was just like,
Did you have to recover alone because you were supposed to be quarantined, or?
well, no.
Sort of.
I live alone.
Oh, you live alone.
So it was just like me on my couch, like it was just me on my couch watching TV with weed. I also work from home, so that was really nice. That
Yeah.
like kept me really sane,
nice. Yeah.
But I was just journaling and going.
Did you have, how long were you dealing with like pain medication, stuff like that?
So I'm like, I certainly don't want to say anything on the record here, but let's just say like mutual aid helped out.
Got it.
Nice.
I had like leftovers from like my previous surgery, which I got FFS in 2023. And
I hear that recovery is also really tough.
well, I didn't get as much done as some girls.
Okay.
Which is, so it was like kind of like I didn't do any jaw stuff, so I
Okay.
was like able to eat solid foods. But some girls, they get their jaw done, and it's like they can't talk.
You can't do
like,
anything. You have to
they
like, do
can't
everything
do-
through a fucking straw.
Exactly.
That's so crazy.
Which is
Jaw
nightmare.
surgery
So
is
how have
no
you
fucking
enjoyed
joke.
your back and forth with the U.S. medical system?
Oh my God, I love the medical system.
Oh,
yes.
Let's
Good.
talk about like here. I am an ally to insurance companies.
Esther Fallick loves insurance companies.
Yes, I do.
Title of up.
Yeah. Voice of a generation loves insurance companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God.
I'm trying to get. Yeah, I'm like, hey, the state. I'm ready to sell out. Like, I will champion all of the things you need me to in order to
Get what you need.
get what I need.
Absolutely.
Mhm,
I feel like that feels like a fair trade.
Yeah.
I think we can continue on this thread, but I also we introduced you, but I do
Oh my
want to talk
God,
about
yeah.
you, who
Oh
you
my
are.
As a creative. Sorry, we just went
Give a
off.
sense of-
We went off.
Yeah. And plenty of space for us to continue going off as the podcast goes on. But
Right.
I would love to just talk to you about your work, about your time in New York City. Esther and I know each other. We didn't actually go to school together,
correct,
but went to the same program.
Yes.
The University of Michigan.
For
Plug
musical
it,
theater,
baby.
Go Blue.
Plug it.
Yeah.
Go Blue.
Yeah. The most.
I did not go there. I didn't get in.
Where'd you go?
CCM.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Similar energy.
I didn't audition because I had a sense I wouldn't get in.
Really?
Yeah.
I actually.
So funny.
Same.
Yeah.
exact
You didn't
thing.
audition?
Yeah.
No.
You just had a feeling. You're like, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a sense.
Also,
Yeah.
I will say, like, in the pre-college route and all of that stuff, CCM got a pretty bad rap amongst people that I knew that were applying. And, like, that was the only school, like, people were talking about, like, weigh-ins and other shit like
okay.
that.
Just to be clear, bullshit. Never happened. I mean, it may have happened before I was there.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sure
think
that's
it
maybe true.
Did happen in the early 2000s. I think by 2010, people were just still talking about it.
Yeah.
And so, but
Yeah, and I think that I think I had heard about the weigh-ins as well, and I was like, no, I am never gonna pass this
That's not-
test.
I also was just
Like,
not,
yeah.
I was not a technical musical theater performer. I was like an actor who liked musical theater.
Right.
And so I knew that was not going to be my bag.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
always kind of had the feeling I was like that psychotic place is gonna love me.
Ugh,
And
that's awesome.
And you know what? They let me in, but they did not love me. I will
Yeah,
say that much.
sure.
But no, most of the shit that I heard was rumor, or like I said, it may have happened before I
Yeah.
was there, but we didn't have any. You know, there were definitely some inappropriate conversations that happened for sure.
Oh yeah. Right.
But I think that's true.
that's anywhere.
That's BFA.
Across the
environment.
board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's BFA.
But
anyway,
I don't know
yeah.
if you remember this. The first time we actually met, I was 17. I was at Impulse, and you were in Ann Arbor for the summer,
Oh my
and you came and
God.
spoke to like
Oh my
the
God.
20 of us, all of whom like very much wanted to go to Michigan. Here's
Yeah.
a senior who was like, I'm having the time of my life.
Aw.
And then got to know each other a little better once I
Yeah.
moved to New York.
Yeah.
I filmed some of your live shows, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And then have just been kind of like liking each other's stories because
Yeah.
you just, I don't know, like during 2020,
Yeah.
during 2024, like seeing like, oh, who kind of aligns
gets
with
it?
me?
Yeah.
Who gets it?
Who
You
gets
know,
it?
like some of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just say a little bit about myself.
Please.
Absolutely.
I went to the University of Michigan for musical theater. That's how we met. And we have never met.
We've actually never met. Yeah.
We met just now. But
We've-
again, like,
We've been
yeah.
on the internet.
And then also we had this weird moment maybe like
oh my God.
5-6 months ago
Yeah,
where
yeah.
like I randomly like I for some reason looked at
You
who
must
I
have
had blocked
Yeah.
and I had blocked you. And
Iconic.
I had yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck
I'm
did
like-
I say?
I'm
I'm
just
sure
like
something stupid.
content wise
Wait.
playing hard to get. You
I
know,
love
like,
it.
Yeah.
This is so funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I
love-
truly don't under I
No, but
was
she
like,
messaged me and was like, hey, like, I'm really sorry. Like, I must have blocked you at one point and I
Yeah.
don't know why, but
Yeah.
I did. And you like apologized. I was like,
yeah.
girl, first of all, that's not true. I will internally have like my own moment if I notice that has happened to me. Like
Yeah.
someone's blocked me or like whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm like, that is your phone. I'm like, if you,
That's so
if,
fair.
if
That's so
something
fair.
I said
Everyone's
or
social
did
media
or you
experience
saw
is
that
like-
you were like, not for me,
Yeah.
I get it.
But it's like it's so funny because it's like and thank you for that acceptance in that space and that's
Absolutely.
like nice to know that I have that in general. But
I'm
it
like
was
never
like
judging. I'm like, whatever.
I was like it had to be a slip of the finger because like what could you possibly have?
I've said-
All you do is like talk about your shows and be
Yeah.
like trans rights
You
and like
know,
women
you never
and shit
fucking,
like that.
You never fucking know. I may have said something that just ticked you right off.
It happens, I guess, but I don't really block people, so I was like, I don't know what
loved it.
happened, so yeah.
I don't really.
Anyway,
well, I'm happy
now
to be in,
our
among,
relationship's
among
better
the,
than ever.
We've really come a long way.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be among the very few people that you've ever blocked.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of
It's
iconic
a
to me.
very I'm like, who else is in that?
Name names.
I'm like you and like VP JD Vance because for a second I was like, they're auto adding people or whatever.
That was
Like,
so
was
weird,
it.
by the way. That
I
was
know.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so when in Michigan, you're from Houston?
I'm from Houston, Texas.
Right.
I
Yeah,
didn't know
I'm
that.
from Houston, Texas. One bit of Esther lore is in 2009, I won the Tommy Tune Award for Best Actor,
Iconic.
which of course brought me to the first ever Jimmy Awards.
The first ever.
That's right.
Whoa.
I was at the
Ooh,
first ever
that
Jimmy
is-
Awards.
That is good lore.
Isn't that crazy lore?
Yeah.
It's like,
Did you win
wow.
a Jimmy?
I did not win the Jimmy, and
I'm
it
so
was
sorry to
like
hear that.
it was actually the first time I didn't win something, and I was like shaken to my core.
I wonder at the Jimmys. I've never thought about that dynamic.
Yeah, because all the
How
winners.
many of those kids it is
Oh
the
my
first
God.
time they've ever lost something?
That's probably most of them, I would say.
Yeah,
When you
because
make it that
especially if
far.
you're the theater kid of your town. Like,
Yeah.
That's
And-
what they said to us at school when we first got there. They're like, "You're all the best from where you come from. It's not going to be like that anymore."
Exactly. They're like, you were in a small pond before, not anymore. You're a little fish now.
So dramatic.
You know, and I'm like, it was so. I made some friends that I still am Facebook friends with.
Facebook.
Oh my God. And there's one other person who was also nominated for Best Actor that also is a woman now.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I love that.
Yeah.
Have you guys connected at all?
We have connected.
That rocks.
Yeah, we have.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but like, so I was at the first Jimmy Awards, and then I went to Michigan, and then I went to LA for a bit because in Michigan, I was doing musical theater and comedy, and I was like, I got really disillusioned with musical theater. I think that like,
You're telling me, girl.
I know,
I
right?
get it.
That is a whole conversation we could get into.
Mhm.
Oh my God, and especially in the past year.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
and even in the past like couple months, I'm
Mhm.
like, in the past like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I'm like, where are you guys?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Absolutely.
Part of the I just blue skied about this, but
Oh,
I was
really?
like, yeah, but I was like, part of the reason that I fell in love with theater is because I'm being so like scatterbrained, but whatever.
That's okay.
That's
Doesn't
all right.
matter.
Okay, part of the reason that I fell in love with theater was because I thought it was like on the social forefront
Totally.
of things.
Totally.
Mm.
You know, like that and it felt that way in the 90s with like gay rights, and there were ways that
Well, I think you still see that in communal theater around
Yeah.
the country, like
Yeah.
communally, and even in theater programs.
yeah,
It is a lot of people who are generally like very accepting. It's
Yeah.
a very progressive environment, but it's also just a like, do you do whatever? Like, it's a lot of people who come from different environments who don't feel accepted and find some acceptance in theater.
right.
And I feel like I see that all the time. I remember that's what I liked about my high school theater program.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's what draws a lot of people there. Once you have to confront commercial theater, if that's
Right.
what you pursue,
Yeah,
I feel like then you come and hit the wall that is just like, nope, we don't give a fuck. Like,
yeah,
theater itself is such an
truly.
unsustainable business model too.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And so there really are, we talk about this all the time, there are no living wage jobs really. There's like a
It's
couple
that
hundred in the
scarcity
city.
mentality that makes you very individualistic. I think.
Yeah.
I think that that's. I've thought a lot about this because I've always wondered, kind of like where that I don't even know what to call it, but like where that like theater person mentality comes from that I
Mhm.
find very difficult to like be around and I can no longer sort of ingratiate myself in.
Yeah,
And I do think that a huge portion of it is this like individualistic mentality that it's like it's me against you, where it's like there aren't enough jobs for both of us,
right.
so there's no solidarity in anything, which is why I think that equity, and I'm no longer a member of equity, so I can say this, but
Yeah.
like I think that equity should have. There have been so many times where I'm like, equity should strike. But there
Mhm.
are it would never work because there are so many people that would be sitting waiting to cross the picket line.
Yeah.
And the lack of solidarity, I think, makes for this sort of lack of community, I think, or just this inability to band together because
Yeah.
it is so this feeling of just like me against you. Like there's no way to really like,
The art form, yeah.
yeah,
The
at
whole,
least commercially, I mean.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole art form feels like it's been like totally captured. And I think a lot of it like has to do with literally like, you know, real estate.
Mm.
It's like the price of these theaters, the price
Yeah.
of like real estate
Yes.
means that like tickets have to cost a certain amount, means that like
Well, even I can't remember. I was filming a show for like Pace maybe or something, and I was talking to someone about the finances of it, and it was like to put on a college production in New York in a theater that Pace owns
Insane.
costs them like $30,000 per night in the theater. So
Just
it's like,
for like the space.
yeah, I can't remember the
Oh,
exact
fuck.
number. That was probably made up, but
yeah. It's extravagant.
but it's
a
extravagant.
lot
It's
of
like
fucking
that's
money.
a space they technically own, and they still are paying rent into it for like the singular night to put on the show or whatever.
So bizarre.
Yeah, the business model's fucked.
The whole business model's fucked. And yeah, so like so the art is very seldom like what's the word? Satisfying.
I get it.
You know?
Yeah, no,
And,
I completely agree.
And even like, you know, the like other theaters have been captured by this like whole nonprofit like way of existing and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, it's rough.
And so that disillusionment, did that start during college? Was that once you graduated and like interfaced with the commercial world a little more?
Yeah, I think it actually in a lot of ways started during college because I was idealistic and I was like, it felt like there wasn't much of a focus on like, well, what can the art form of musical theater do to like change the world, which is, you know, I can't apologize for being that way. You know what I mean? It's like,
I completely get it.
yeah,
I really
like,
do.
and it was all about like, you know, I realized when I learned that like the BFAs were just about like training people how to book, like I 100% see the value in that. It's like it's like training people how to be like kind of middle class workers in musical theater, like, but I do think that it like the art form really suffers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I started feeling that. And so,
well, I can't speak to other programs, but at least in our program, a lot of the education is geared directly towards like how to audition, how to succeed in that 60
and
seconds.
that's why you guys work
because
more than
it
we
is
do.
getting the job. A lot of people work because
like,
of that.
I do genuinely.
But,
I was just talking to some college friends about this. I was like, the way, because I'm so around Michigan kids, like Michigan BFA kids that are, you know, now 30, but like, I was with my college friends and I was like, I think the reason that Michigan works more than we do is because it's so geared on like how to get the job. Yeah. It's like, you know what you're doing once you get the job for the most part, right? Like, you know how to like, you know, be in rehearsal and take notes and all these things, but it's like getting there is the whole thing. And like, I don't think that we were so geared towards that. Yeah. Ours was just like about being hot. I'm just kidding, but like, well, a little
that's
bit.
also an important part of the industry. Like, it's an important part of booking.
Yeah,
honestly.
It's fucking crazy. But like, I just feel like that your guys' program was so geared towards like making sure that you know how exactly to get the job. Yeah. And like, and also like, I don't know, not to go too far into this because it's like sort of a tangent, but like I feel that Michigan, from what I understand, obviously I didn't go there because I didn't get in once again, but like is so geared, like you guys are like leaders and best, you know what I mean? Like they're like, you are the best and you have the ability to get this job, so here we're going to teach you how to do it. You all should have the career that you think you should have. Like you have the talent, your base and all of that. Where they were like to us, they were like, you're a fucking maggot, like everyone can replace you. You know,
so funny.
So it was this like thing of like breaking you down to like build you up again. And I know a lot of people that went to my school that have, you know, spent the last 4 or 5 years working on just building back the confidence that they feel that they lost.
I think that's a BFA thing in general, though, too. A lot of kids come in so confident because they are the star in their hometown. They love theater. They love performing. They love the community. They love something about it. And then you get to this environment where everyone is brought back to square one. They don't let you perform, or they tell you like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And that confidence, the thing that makes you exciting and probably got you into the school, disappears and evaporates.
It's so fucking sad.
And so many people, like I would say like 50% of the people I went to school
with
to
me entirely.
lose it and do not get it back.
Completely.
And end up in a different industry, end up not performing anymore.
Yep.
Like, but just lose it. And it's not.
It's really sad.
Yeah,
it is.
And I think I'm wondering if maybe the focus was more about the art form itself. And like, I have a few moments that I can think of at school where I was like, oh yeah, this is why I liked this in the first place, you know, or whatever it was. But and those moments were really heavily influenced by other students more than they were influenced by faculty, I think.
And something that I think about when I look at like why I fell in love with theater in the first place is that at my high school, like the theater world, and you know, even when I would do extracurricular stuff like in middle and high school, there were like such strong communities. And so for me, like theater represented a way for communities to get together.
Absolutely.
A way to like bring people together to make things happen. And then, like you said, once you go to school, it gets so individualistic. And once you get out, it's even more individualistic.
Yes.
So this kind of like transitioning into what I've been up to creatively since then is like So I started doing comedy. I did like improv and sketch and stuff at like Groundlings and UCB. And then during the pandemic, I started transitioning, coming up on my 4-year hormone birthday.
Slay.
In like a week.
Congratulations.
Thank
Happy
you,
birthday.
thank you. And then I also started doing like stand-up. And like I was always kind of afraid to do stand-up.
I think that's the scariest thing in the world. You could not pay me $1 million to get up there and try to make people laugh by myself.
It was really fucking scary.
So scary.
Well, but I will say to your credit, like you, even before you started doing stand-up, because I remember the shows that I filmed that you did were shows that you had written, and you were making a lot of jokes. Like those were funny shows.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, they were. I think about that. I'm like, there were skills that I picked up. It was like basically a one-person show where I was addressing the audience the whole time. I was just in character, and that's basically what I do now. It's just like I've said basically 8 times now, but in this show that I was doing pre-transition, I would write along with my co-writers these parody songs that were like these movie musical adaptations, like real movies, fake adaptations in the style of existing things.
Yeah, like
so
the
it was
Forrest Gump musical.
Yeah, the Forrest Gump musical. Yeah,
so funny.
It was so fun to do too, and it was like a really great time. And now I'm doing basically the same thing, but instead of the parody being like movies, it's like through the trans feminine lens.
I love that.
So it's like these songs that are like my most like popular song is this one that's kind of riffing on those songs that women sing in like saloons, you know.
Okay.
But it's like for a trans woman,
That's
and
iconic.
it's called "Look Who's Mommy Now."
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's like what if this song existed but for a trans girl?
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you like developed that skill of like making these adaptations while doing those shows pre-pandemic, and then kind of just like transfer the lens. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then like instead of talking in character, now like
You're just addressing the audience as you.
Yeah. And it's still, you know, stand up, it's always like a persona, but like
how was that just on a level of, because you were always presenting your own writing, but there is something about playing a character where it is a shield to the audience. Like even if it's your own writing, you have that layer of separation. What was it like removing that?
To drop it. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it was so scary, but also like it was basically during the pandemic, I had all this time to like meditate and journal and do yoga, right? And that's what like brought me to coming out.
That's amazing, because I was just drinking. You were doing that, and I was drinking White Claws at noon. So good for you.
And I'm sure if there was another pandemic, I'd be there.
Okay,
but
fine.
it's like at this particular time of my life, excuse me. So I like, and when I spent a lot of my 20s trying to control what people thought about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized when I realized I was a woman, I was like, everyone, like, there's all of these perceptions that people have about trans women that they like, whether they're supportive or not, these things are just in the air, and we all pick them up. I had them myself, you know, positive and negative. And all of those things are out of my control, and I will be entering every single conversation with. So I cannot control anymore what people think about me and like what their perception is of me. I can work on getting hotter. I can work on getting like, you know, more comfortable with myself. And so when I started doing stand up, that came at a time when I was like beginning to understand the full extent of what losing this control was like, and it was really overwhelming. But when I would go on stage, whether it was like in an open mic or in a show, for 3 to 10 minutes, I did have a little more control over how people perceived my transness. I could be like, I could take what they thought about transness and like play into it and then subvert it to tell them what I wanted to tell them about my experience.
That's really
That's
cool
awesome.
and very, very smart.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah.
It makes sense to me too that because you have such a background and like the chops as a performer already and so much experience in that space, that then that space becomes the place where you can kind of like reclaim it first or
Yes.
take control of it first
Yes.
and find the confidence in the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so like some of my girlfriends who like they're, you know, there's like the medical transition, there's a social transition, there's like there's so much to focus on when you kind of start this process.
Yeah.
It's
really overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's a reason that The Matrix is the gender movie, because you realize like as soon as you start thinking about it, you're like, oh,
The
it
whole
is
world
this
is opened up
morass
to me.
that we are all in, and we walk through it every second.
Absolutely. It's wild.
It's so wild. But so some girls like focus a lot on their medical transition up top. I focused a lot on like my social / like artistic transition. I was like, how can I establish my like voice like immediately as like I'm this girl who gets on stage in this way and talks about it in this way, and like yeah. And
How quickly did that come? Just in a sense of, I'm watching from social media, so I see
totally
like the clips of the banger jokes that are hitting.
Right.
Like,
Right,
and so I
yeah.
get to be like, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
awesome. And from my perspective, as just an outside person, I'm like, oh, Esther, like when you found your way into stand-up, it felt like such a natural
yes.
jump. I know for a lot of people,
Yeah.
it's not that easy just getting up on stage. Like how quickly were you getting on and it was landing for
Yeah.
you and actually hitting?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. I think that it has been faster for me than like some people that start stand up. And you know, I say that, but also it's like, well, you know, I've been performing for
You've been
15
telling jokes on
We
stage.
talked
I've been
for
telling jokes
a
on
decade.
stage
We
for
talk
a
about this all the
decade.
time
Yeah.
with me as well, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's been faster for me, but I'm like, I've been performing since I was fucking
Exactly.
7. So it's like
Exactly.
all of those skills just transfer right over to the
It
new thing. So it
transfers.
feels
Yeah.
crazy where it's like, oh, this happened so fast, but it's like I wasn't starting from ground zero.
Exactly.
You know what
like,
I mean?
people with stand up, they say it takes like 10 years to get really good at it. And I still think I do have a ways to go.
Of course.
But I
that's
don't
true.
think I have 7 more years. I think,
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
right.
Like, and I think that that's because some of the early things that people have to get over is just getting comfortable on stage
Mhm.
and figuring out what their point of view is. And those are 2 things that I was like, I have these locked in already.
Right.
I'm already comfortable on stage. And there was like,
You don't have to do the heavy lifting of finding
Exactly.
a perspective. Yeah.
Well, and
yeah.
you've had, again, speaking of you writing your own show, so many years of, I wrote this joke, I told it on stage, and it killed.
yes.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. And even just knowing that your point of view, knowing those things going in, is such an advantage.
Well, it's interesting for me
Yeah.
because I didn't really
Right.
know you prior. So when I started, until you blocked me, I'm just kidding. I was just seeing like the bangers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I started, and James was like, "Oh, I know her from school,"
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, that's so crazy." And I was seeing, and then it I felt like the timing of like when you started doing stand up, or when I was seeing you do stand up, and then to the point where you became like a very sort of like influential voice in comedy. Like I felt like you were like at everything, and you were hosting, and you were doing all these
Yeah.
things. Felt like it did happen really fast, which was obviously cool to watch. But like
Yeah.
I imagine on the inside of that, it was probably very overwhelming. But I love that idea of just being like, your perspective was so clear, which is why it's
Right.
been so quick. You know,
Exactly.
you don't have to develop
Exactly.
that. You don't have to think about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I am continuing to figure it out.
Of
Like,
course, yeah.
I think one thing that like currently I'm trying to like figure out for myself is, how do I talk about politics on stage? Because like when I first started performing stand up, like it was so early in my transition too that I really needed people to like me, to feel safe. And now it's like,
Now you care less.
I care less about that.
Yeah.
I know I'm like, the people who like me, and
Totally.
I also know that I'm really good. So
do you feel in a factor, just in the way that trans existence in the U.S. is political
Yeah.
in itself
Absolutely.
already,
yeah.
do you
yeah.
feel like that getting on stage as a trans woman is a political act already, or do you feel like you
Yeah.
have to inject the politics in it for it to feel like a political.
I do feel like it's a political act already, and like I resent that. You know what I mean?
Totally understand.
And I resent that more for the other girls, because like I have good friends that are trans women comedians that are fucking amazing, that like if they had their way, they would just get up and be doing their comedy. My comedy, even if I was cis, like I've always been politically activated.
Absolutely.
Like, so it always would be this like defiant thing, even if it's with a smile,
Same.
you know?
Yeah, I totally get that.
So like, so it is politicized already, and, but it's like, I feel like one thing I want to do is like take the brunt of that a little bit. It's like, I'll make some of those more like, I don't know, those like more like outright political jokes. Someone else that I think does that really well is, do you know Hayden Johnson?
I don't.
She's a trans girl comic. She lives in LA, and she has like some really funny TikToks that she makes about, you know, J.K. Rowling and shit.
Yeah,
you know
totally.
what I mean? But like,
I feel like Ella Yerman does it well too.
oh yeah, Ella
love Ella
Yerman is
Yerman.
like
Icon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
icon. Yeah, she's like, and she is someone who, I mean, this is getting into another conversation, but I'm like, she's someone who's like way underemployed, like should be on fucking Weekend Update.
So I was gonna say she should be on like Weekend Update, or she should have her own like cable like
She
late
should
night show.
100% have her own cable late
Like
night
a Trevor
show.
Noah, or like
Well, and her
Yeah.
show through the Brooklyn Public.
Yeah, what is it called? The Brick.
Yeah, whatever that program is.
It's called
Yeah.
Late Stage Live for people who don't know.
Yeah.
Is that just, because I just don't know the actual details of the production side of it. Is that just her pitching and
Yeah, are they
producing
doing
that
it like
entirely?
DIY? Or,
Yeah, it's DIY. So that's a public service, and if you go through these courses, then you're able to like just use their
Use the
space.
space and
You just have
stuff.
to like rent it, and
It's
there's-
what she does is brilliant, and I
know.
didn't really know her. I had seen clips of her of Late Stage Live that had gone viral or whatever.
yeah.
And then I saw her host an Jen show, I think, right? Was it
Oh.
at Sultan Room, I think? And she was so fucking funny.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't even know, like, I knew she did comedy, obviously, based on the
Yeah.
videos, but I was like, oh, and none of that she wasn't really doing anything super political, but it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, this girl's a star. Like,
She truly is.
Yeah, she's great. But yeah, I think like that's such an interesting perspective to have on it, because I do, I know people who feel positively about being just sort of a political act by existing, like and then I also know a lot of people who resent the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
And I think both perspectives obviously are extremely valid, and wanting, and I like that you knew that your comedy would be political regardless of your gender, like always, like it would always kind of have that through line.
Yeah.
Which I resonate with, because I feel that way about music. Well, I just think art in general. I think when people are like, tell artists to like stay out of politics, I'm like,
What are you talking about?
what the fuck are you talking about? Like, art is always political. And even if you're not making political art, like it is always influenced by the political climate.
Well, also, if
around
you say my art is not political, that's a political statement.
It is.
You're just
Absolutely.
hiding from the politics of it,
Yeah.
or you are just
Exactly.
trying to like back your way away from
And I
it.
think it's so funny where it's like with like the music that I make, I'm like, punk music is political. Like the punk movement is inherently
Always has been.
It always has been. It started as a political movement.
Yeah.
We like made music and fashion out of it, which is amazing. But like, I'm like, to not say like every song that we write has some feeling, or just the feeling of it is so, it feels so influenced by whatever's going on. Like I don't know if I would be able to write if I wasn't thinking about the fucking political climate. So to try to, and also that's me being a cis woman, where it's like I don't necessarily have to, like, I don't know, being a woman in the music industry is one thing, but I'm like, but I don't have to be concerned about my existence feeling inherently political. So I like to have that feeling of being like, no, I'm going to be very clear about where I stand on this.
Yeah.
Because I have the privilege to do so. But like, I don't know, I find that really interesting. Like,
Yeah, it's something I think about. It's like obviously I would prefer if trans lives were not politicized. Like
course.
that is a better world. But like one thing that's sort of nice as a trans artist is like, you know, again, going back to the stand up, it's like people have to figure out their why. It's like, why do I do this? And
Totally.
it's like, that was never a question for me. Like my why was cut out for me from day one. It's like
kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what has the ramp up been in terms of when you started stand up? How consistently were you performing, and now how consistently are you performing?
She's booked and busy, girl.
I'm a little booked and busy. Yeah. Although I also try to make it look like I'm booked and busy. That's an important
that's
part
half
of
of the
the
business of the
half
internet.
of the battle. Yeah.
I mean, even just that was something that was my first key of getting a little disillusioned, even in the theater world, was how much people
make it look
feel
like they're doing more.
Not only make it look like they are doing more, but feel the need to constantly presenting what they're doing. It's like my least favorite thing about finding my way back into a theater gathering on accident.
Right.
And people are like, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and it's just
on accident. It's so funny.
Like,
finding my way back on
happens to the
accident.
best of us.
No, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I'm fielding the same three questions from all these people who don't care and just want an excuse to tell me about the 6 things they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is another reason that I had to like leave the
biz.
theater industry. And of course, a part that I'm not saying here is like, well, I also never booked.
Okay, this is,
I should say that as well.
I say this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, just to be clear, I didn't work after college.
Literally.
There was a
To be clear.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not trying to say like.
Yeah, I didn't like hit the top and then I was like,
I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
No,
Like,
not the
a little
situation.
humility here. Yeah.
Yeah, was not doing well. I luckily had another avenue that was working out for me, which I took, not entirely based on that was all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It was because I wasn't working.
Well, yeah.
But yes.
And so like, one of the things is like I wanted to be proud of and be able to stand by those 3 things that I'm like, oh, I'm doing this and this and this.
Right.
And like sometimes like I'm like, I feel an existential dread when I like look at the things that some people have to post happily about.
Yeah, I feel you.
You know what I'm saying?
100% know.
Yeah.
I'm like, and that's your life, and I hope you're happy.
I literally.
And it's me. It's like if I were doing that, I would not be happy.
Yeah.
You know?
But you know that about yourself.
Exactly.
So you can do what you want and be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that making your own art or like making your own work has given you more fulfillment than like waiting?
Yeah. Like.
Yeah.
Fucking big time.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, there is no better feeling in the world than writing a joke and it getting a laugh.
Yeah.
Like, there is no. There's a reason that people talk about it as like a high.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
absolutely, yeah.
like there are some, like sometimes my songs, usually my stand-up set is like I do like 5 minutes of stand-up and then like a song, and it's like that's 10 minutes usually. Usually my songs go well. They always go well. But sometimes there is like a magic in the room and the songs like hit in this way that people are hooting and hollering and they like can't believe what they're hearing.
Yeah.
And it is fucking nirvana.
That's awesome.
Like we are touching the sky.
Yeah.
It's like it's an amazing feeling.
And that's where like the theater girl in you is still there somewhere.
Yes.
100%.
This is where
He's in there.
it's like, because like, I mean, this is so funny, but I remember when I went to college, that's when Book of Mormon came out. And now I cannot stand behind my fandom of that show, of course. But
it was a different time.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be Josh Gad before I transitioned. It's like, and thank God for that. Because I would be Josh Gad with a fucking slit throat and wrists. Like,
I'm done.
But like, I remember reading the Ben Brantley review for that. And this is my musical theater. It's like, yeah, she still has those deep pulls. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like
Ben Brantley, deep cut.
Yeah. Like, and Ben Brantley was like, musical comedy never works well except for when it does. And when it does, it's nirvana.
Magic.
Yeah.
It's magic. You like, and you reach like levels of like ascension that you just can't reach in any other room.
I will say,
you know?
the first time I used to date a guy who was in Book of Mormon, he
Yeah.
sucked. But
Sure.
yeah, of course.
Yes.
But the first time I saw it on tour, I saw it on tour for the first time in probably like 2018, 19 maybe.
Mhm.
I laughed my ass off, like
Yeah.
in a real way, because I was expecting to be like, oh, okay, the show's been on Broadway forever, like
Right.
it's tired, whatever, blah 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 blah.
Matt Stone and Trey Parker know how to write a joke.
They
A lot of it
do.
has not aged
I was
well,
like,
Yeah.
but
I was like,
not a
belly
lot of
laughing
comedy.
in the
Yeah.
theater because
Yeah.
I knew some of the music, but I didn't know it super well. So the jokes that I had never heard before got me so good, where I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I get it. This is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and also really problematic and has a lot of issues.
Well,
as
of course.
but like,
yeah.
but I remember feeling like and being shocked also that I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like, that is something that as I've like followed my instincts more and more, I've been able to get that feeling at some of my shows. And it's not a feeling that I would have been able to achieve
Yeah.
had I you know, been the 10th Elder Cunningham or the next like I don't even know what comedies there
Yeah,
are.
me neither.
Like,
I'm
you
like,
know
I
what
have no
mean?
idea. But
Like,
I get what
you know what I
you're
mean?
saying, yeah.
If I was even like, and not even saying if I hadn't transitioned, like, but more like like, it's just, I don't know. Basically, when I started transitioning, I was like, sometimes I look around at my life and I'm like, I thought that I would have had to have given up at least like one of my dreams, but so far I haven't.
That's
I've been able
amazing.
to like live them all. It's not in the form I expected,
No.
and it's not like at the scale I expected yet.
But okay,
Yet.
come on, yet.
You
But that
know?
also speaks to, I don't know. That's being willing to be malleable with those dreams, like still being steadfast in what they are.
Yeah.
But recognizing how you move. Because how long have you been in New York now? About a decade.
Yeah, 2017 is when I came to New York.
So a little less than a decade. Like
yeah.
that's really amazing. I feel like most people, again, speaking to so many people that I know went to school with, that I
Yeah.
love who love theater,
Yeah.
just hit the city, hit some part of the industry, came up against that wall, and we're
Yeah.
like,
And just
you know
couldn't
what?
do it.
Not
Yeah.
for me, or
Yeah.
not. I don't know. And there's
I think what it is that it's like less about being malleable, but I think it's just about being in alignment with yourself, where
Yeah.
it's like once you know what you want out of whatever you want, whether it's
Yeah.
theater, music, comedy, whatever, being in alignment with yourself in the art that you're making is really the only thing that can give you that feeling.
Yes.
And again, like I get it, where it's like I'm not totally at the scale. I mean, I'm doing really cool things which I'm really excited about, but I'm, you know, my dream is massive, right? Like
Yeah.
my dream is obviously to like headline MSG, but
Yeah.
like, and though I'm not there yet, I do feel hugely in alignment with myself and things that like I'm doing like a theater job at the end of this month that I never would have thought someone would just reach out and ask me to do, but like there are people that I met that I felt really aligned with, and I think previously had I met them 5-6 years ago, I don't know if I would have connected with these people in the same way because
Yeah.
I wasn't totally in line with what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so because I met them 2 years ago, now they're coming to me and having me do theater projects for them because they like, oh, we love that you're like not like the theater girls that we meet very
Yeah,
often. You know what I mean? And
right.
I was not in that place 5 or 6 years ago. So it's like, it's really, I think about just getting clear about what you want out of these art forms that are so, and we live in New York where it's like you can find a fucking partner, a job, and an apartment in like 10 minutes if you walk outside.
Literally.
So I'm like, everything is at your fingertips, but
Yeah.
if you don't know what it is that you want out of it or what it is that makes you feel that feeling,
Yeah. That's it.
you're kind of fucked.
Because something I like, something I will say is like, there has been so much uncertainty for me.
Absolutely.
And it's been like, I haven't known what the thing in a year is going to be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like I can make 5-year goals. And that just might be because I'm a fucking trans woman in the country right now.
Yeah.
But like, but what I can do is like feel out what feels like the next right thing for me.
That's I really resonate with that though too, because I, even in the last 2 years, have gotten a lot more specific about the things that I want, but I feel similar where I'm like, I don't know that I can project out 5 years,
Yeah.
but I can project 3 months,
Yeah.
and really go hard for those 3 months,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then check in.
Mm-hmm.
Am I doing what I want to be doing? Yes.
Yeah.
No. This is good. This is bad. Like,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of power in really honing in on those things, and not
Yeah.
necessarily feeling like you need to know a year from now where
Yeah.
that leads.
Right.
But it's amazing how, like, people, I think, overestimate how much you can accomplish in a month, but underestimate how much you can accomplish in like 6. It's
Wow.
really wild.
Yeah.
Just how
I
much
get
directed
it, I
energy
get
you
it.
can get.
That's good. Yeah.
I think it's like it goes back to kind of that individualism conversation we were having about theater too, where it's like theater doesn't always, especially the theater that we're seeing commercially, be very successful. It doesn't necessarily require you to be in alignment with yourself. Like, it requires malleability for
Yeah.
sure. But like, I think actually sometimes, you can shoot me dead for saying this, I don't know who's going to do that. Like, the Broadway League is coming into my house with a gun. But like, I feel like it's like, I think especially for women, and I just will say like non-men, I think that actually oftentimes people who are not in alignment with themselves are more likely to work because they don't necessarily have a perspective, and that can be, I think, threatening to people in power
Yeah.
a lot. And I will say I think this happens more likely with non-cis men.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I always felt like I was like, I have too much of an opinion for these jobs.
Yeah.
So I think that when you get too far down that rabbit hole, this is not true for everybody obviously, but like when you get too far down that rabbit hole of really kind of just being malleable and just being like a blank slate or whatever, you then probably come to a point in your life where you're going, what the fuck do I want? Who the fuck am I? Like, how do I obtain that feeling of making art that I fucking care about?
Right.
So like, you know, moving away from that is, I think, at least for me, has been such a gift, because I felt like I've gotten closer to like the core of who I am, which then allows me to do theater in a different way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where I'm like, I'm only going to do stuff that really feels like it's valuing me as a person, not just as an actor, not just as a body, but like valuing me, what I have to say, my opinions, what I bring to a piece of work. You know what I mean?
Yes. It's like, I feel like so much of the past 4 years, basically like since coming out, and it's like, I feel so cliched, like framing so much of my like artistic experience around that.
No,
I don't know, but
it makes perfect
But it's
sense.
also,
you know,
like, what has been going on in your life.
It's also
and, like,
what's been going on in my life, right.
You are
True.
just a few months off of surgery recovery too. Like, it
Yeah.
has dominated so much of just how you have to move through life, and like now
not even
entering
to
a
fucking
new
mention
administration,
the political climate.
Yeah, like,
where it's like, of course, that's what
how much you
you're
navigate. So
frame it.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. And I also think that there was like there had been a sort of reactionary pushback to like talking about identity in a way that ultimately was fascistic. Anyway.
Anyway.
But like, I think that like, so like something I've been saying to people and something I've been feeling within myself, basically in my 20s, there were 3 ways that I was afraid to live. One was as a woman. The other, even though I wasn't really consciously aware of that, one was as a woman. The other was as a stand-up. And I was kind of toying with it by doing this other show, but I knew like being a stand-up is the way I had to get my point across.
Totally.
And then the other one was like as a politically activated person. And slowly over the past 4 years, I've been like knocking down another domino. It's been like, what's this next thing that scares me? And it's like, now that I'm a little comfortable with that, how can I add in the next thing that scares me?
And do you think that it was knocking down the first domino that has set the reaction in motion?
Yeah, I do. I think that if I hadn't had the courage to come out as and live as a woman, then I don't think I would be a stand-up. I think I'd be doing character stuff. Not to say just because I wouldn't know how to be myself on stage. And so I would be doing character stuff. And then I also think that
that's interesting that's why you feel that would happen.
Yeah. And I don't think that's the case for everyone, but it was the case for me.
Yeah.
And I also think that I was much more scared politically because frankly, it felt like there were things I could lose.
That's exactly it. That's what I'm saying about this, where it's like you feel fear of getting aligned with yourself because you feel like you're going to lose something, or like, and I do just end up feeling like it's like with theater, especially, I think that's what we're talking about is like anyone with a fucking opinion can be threatening. And it's like, that's does such a nasty thing to your psyche, I think.
Yeah.
It is ultimately, you're doing violence to yourself.
Absolutely. I feel like it's like, and I see this with so many people, and we've had, you know, the theater people that we've had on here have been extremely unafraid, which is amazing. But like I feel that wall from so many people that I know that are still, and it's like, now it just kind of drives me insane where I'm just like, oh my God, like fucking wake up. Like it's okay. Like, I don't know.
No, I feel that too. There's so many times that
it's so hard for me.
Almost put something on my close friend story about like,
oh yeah,
where the fuck is the theater community right now?
No,
like
literally. And it's like, I mean, we've seen it in the last year, I think a lot.
I wonder too, if you could pull people once they were 70, 80, like who really held their tongue through life, like how much it really served them. Because the thing that gets me about it is like a lot of people fear speaking out or saying anything because of what they could lose in the future. I'm like, you're already not working. Like you're already not there. Like it's one thing if you were on the top of the world, like you see people lose jobs for not working.
It's the same thing.
Not for saying certain things.
It's the same thing with like being a happy human being, where it's like, well, I'm afraid I'm afraid if I do that, I'm still going to be unhappy. It's like, well, you're not happy now, so what the fuck do you have to lose?
Yeah,
right, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So it's like, it's really hard for me to watch, and it's really hard. And that's not to say I've like totally figured it out. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal here at all, but I do feel like I've gotten
You're on the road.
way closer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There is no figuring it out.
No, it's a lifelong thing of having to like work through it. But like that did, you know, the years post college where I wasn't working. And I did have a lot of that fear, whether it's politically or otherwise. Like I do feel that I had to work for those years afterwards to try to gain that confidence back and gain that self, you know, whatever you want to call it, that like, I don't even know, just like, I just had just getting closer to myself at my core. Like I had to actively work to be like, it's okay. You're allowed to say that. And like, I still like have theater girl brain when I want to do something in music. Like I remember we did a festival in the summer, I guess. Yeah, I guess it was this summer. Yeah. And I was like, really just felt very, very called to speak about Gaza.
Yeah.
And I remember like, it's the most scared I think ever been. And it was a big crowd, which is why I felt so emboldened to do it. And I wasn't on a tour where it wasn't my tour, where it was like someone in a headliner could come up to me and be like, hey, why the fuck did you do that? You know, it was like, it was our set at a festival. No one was going to come up to me and go, you're done. You fucked up. You know, there wasn't a whole lot to lose, and yet when the moment came where I was like, this is my opportunity to say something, I like looked around and I looked at James, who happened to be side stage, and was just like, do it. And I was like, okay, so I said it, but I still will say like, that was the most scared I've ever felt. And there was no backlash. No one came after me. There was nothing, whatever. Everyone was just like, we're proud of you. Good work or whatever. Yeah. And I felt so much clearer. I felt moral clarity about it because I was like, had I not done that, I would have walked away going, fuck, you really did not listen to yourself here.
That is exactly the moment that,
you know,
like, I so understand what you're talking about. First of all, yes, good for you for fucking saying something.
I appreciate it.
Because
I
not
needed
enough
to.
people, like you've heard all of my qualms with musical theater, but one of my big qualm with comedy is like, it sees itself as like, it's like, we're the subversive truth tellers.
Totally.
I'm like, you guys are all fucking cowards.
Yeah, no, literally. Yeah. Where I was just like, I don't want to walk away from this moment feeling like, wow, you really didn't listen. You really didn't honor the feeling that you had here.
Yeah.
And like, that's something that, and I'm sure you resonate with this is something that I've had to learn to love about myself, this intense feeling that
so identify.
I do want to lean
Yeah,
into
like,
in this conversation too, just getting into the comedy side of this.
Yeah.
I do think comedy loves to paint itself.
Cowards.
No, but comedy loves to paint itself as like, this is dangerous,
Subversive.
This
Yeah.
is like, we are doing something.
Yes.
We're saying what needs to be said.
Yes.
But then the second any type of backlash hits a comic, then it's like everyone, oh, I should be able to say whatever I want.
Yeah.
I should be able to, like, I don't know. I feel like comedy is in a huge boom right now. It's like having a renaissance, I feel like. But I do think that I don't know what the right word is. Like
disconnect.
That disconnect is so present whenever I see people perform.
It's something that I feel like when I see people perform too, because like I don't know. I also think about people who have positioned themselves as tastemakers, as like cultural leaders and things like that, you know, in the comedy world. And I'm like, you are too afraid right now. And I think that there is this reactionary backlash that took some foothold in the comedy world that I think some people are undoing, which is like identity politics is like cringe and things like that. And to, like, you know, like is Hannah Gatsby funny? Like whatever is my answer to that. You know what I mean?
Who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah, totally.
Like, you can talk about anything. You can talk about like things that might be seen as cringe, and the only question is, are you funny?
Yeah.
And a lot of the trans comics I know, we're the funniest ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's also what I appreciate about comedy is like, at the end of the day, if you're funny, it wins out.
Yeah.
And
right.
It's less comedy itself so much as the discourse around
We've
comedy.
also seen
sometimes
this
that
on the other
makes
end
you
of
sad.
things.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We've
Yeah.
seen this on like some really nasty right-wing jokes, or like just some shitty jokes about identity politics, where it's like the backlash, and I'm not condoning those shitty jokes, but my point is that some of them are funny and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
And the people that make a funny joke about whatever the fuck it is, whatever identity politics, whatever they want to say, those are the people who don't really get affected by the backlash.
Yeah.
When it's a shitty joke that's not fun, when it's a nasty joke about someone that's not funny, those are the people who end up not doing well. You know what I mean? And that's an interesting point. It's just like, if it's funny, it wins out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's really the thing. And I will give respect to people when they're funny. Like,
Yeah.
I actually have had a friend who reached out to me once because like she thought that this one joke was transphobic, and I didn't think it was transphobic, and I also thought it was sort of funny, so I was like, I'm sorry, girl, like I'm not gonna say anything to the comic, like I don't.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, I feel like I'm more thinking of right now, like the people that are coming into my head are like people that kind of position themselves as like if I said names, could you like
Yeah, we can
bleep them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. One person's another is like who's like,
I know
you
that
know
name,
what I'm talking
but
about? It's like people who kind of see themselves as like these cool like alt voices, but have been pretty much silent on Gaza, aren't saying shit right now about like trans rights, you know, aren't going out there in the streets as far as I can tell. And it's like, there's a question of like, well, do you have to, you know, it could be entirely possible. I leave space for the fact that maybe they are actually very engaged in activism and they're just not putting it on social media. But I don't think that that's the case.
When you have a platform like that, does it matter? Because I'm like, that's your platform. I don't care if you're doing something behind the scenes. Like, your impact is.
I do ultimately think that I do believe that silence is violence. Like,
absolutely.
I do think that silence equals death.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that we have to be really loud right now, and people just like fucking. Frankly, as a trans woman, I would really love to know that you are not going to fucking write some piece about how you regret not having stood up for me in 30 years.
Yeah, because really, who gives a shit about that? And also,
Yeah.
it's like it's so self-serving at the
Yeah.
at that point, and it's like I get, I can sympathize with fear, of course,
Yeah.
and fear of losing something, but like we said, at the end of the day, I'm so much more interested in artists and art who are just in line with, I don't know, it's so hard for me to get down to the root of it, but I'm like, if you're really listening to yourself, the scary thing to me is I'm like, if you're listening to yourself, maybe you're not, and maybe you don't care, maybe you don't give a fuck, which is horrifying to me and scary.
And I think like there are a lot of people like that.
Do you think?
I do. I think there are a lot of people
aren't thinking that deeply about it.
Yes. And like
chilling.
It's
literally bone chilling.
Bone chilling.
But I don't know. I think that there is a lot of
that's so crazy
American subculture like that. Like I think that we see more of the loud demographics on social media, and so we get to see people who are loud on one direction or the other. But I think there are a lot of people who, for two different reasons. One, like there are a lot of people who are just struggling in their day-to-day life and are like, I cannot give a fuck about what exists outside my sphere.
Yeah.
I am more sympathetic to that. But then I think there are a lot of people who just don't want to think that deeply about the world and would rather not confront it.
Do you think that those people, I'm like, wow, what would that be like? Would that be nice? Like, would that...
Well, they're probably all white.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
would the brain emptiness feel... would I feel relief at that?
I do think about that sometimes. I'm like, if I was just like
brain
dumb,
yeah,
would my life be a lot better?
I was just stupid.
Because I do know some dumb people who like
Right,
I
it's
love
a really
because they're
interesting
just
question.
kind of,
You know what I mean?
It's worth asking.
It is.
It's
I'm
worth
like, would you feel
asking.
relief? But yeah, no. I mean, I think you can't untangle that from privilege. I mean, where it's like,
yeah.
Honestly, I feel like whatever. I feel like the contradictions inherent in like liberalism or like Zionism right now, you have had to, maybe I'm speaking for myself again, but like, may I be so bold to say,
please,
you will have had to ignore so many contradictions that ultimately so many pathways in your brain will have been shut down that you cannot see the full picture anymore.
Absolutely.
True.
Absolutely.
But I also just think like the way we get information now is so segmented that people aren't always like fully aware of how siloed they are. Like I think of how segmented, like just because of the way algorithms work, the information you get, that you might not even be aware of like entire worlds that exist.
I think a lot of people aren't aware about the executive orders and what they mean.
100%.
Maybe there's a bit of growing awareness, but of course I was on Blue Sky as they each dropped.
Well, and I think because the Trump administration already had their first term, like no matter how it ended, all the shit, all of the protests and everything that popped off, like I think a lot of people, because there already was one and people survived in their in their world, they're like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's we're gonna get through it again. And it's just like blind. If you really dig into what's happening to people, like it's really fucked up. And a lot of people do not want to or have the empathy to expend that far.
It's too threatening to their sense of self.
Yeah, sense of self, sense of the world being good, sense of optimism about like day to day. Like
I can't even imagine having that like sort of general belief about the world.
But
like I really can't. Like I really can't just kind of imagine going through it being like, it'll probably be okay.
I think there are a lot of people like that.
And like, would it give me relief? I don't think I would be the person that I am if I held that belief. Like, I don't think that my personality would be the same.
But it's why, like, I think a lot of people who like lean heavily into like liberalism can't really unpack the scale of like the military industrial complex or like what the U.S. is doing on a grand scale.
Right.
Because if they did, it would
completely shake.
It would shatter the identity of like how they exist in the world, what they think about the world. Like, and I think a lot of people become harder radicalized because of specific instances, whether it is like something devastating to them, like losing their house or something crazy like that, or on the other side, like going to a protest that you think is normal and then getting kettled by the NYPD and like those are the things that shatter people's perceptions, and then it's like, okay, I can't go back. But a lot of people never get that far, and are not going to extend themselves in a place where they can.
And I will say, like, I do have, like I said, I have sympathy for those people. Like, I do have, you know, some sense of like, your world looks very different than mine, and I'm not necessarily, well, I am judging. I can't say I'm not judging, but like, you know, especially people in similar positions, class-wise, race-wise, as me, like white women, you know, that exist in the world like that. It's hard to have sympathy for those people, but you know, I do end up, maybe it's more pity that I feel, where I'm like, wow, that makes me feel very sad, and I feel badly that you have not had this experience where you're able to really look at the world through a lens that I feel will ultimately be more beneficial to you, and also,
I mean, one thing that I feel about it is like, well, first of all, what you were saying reminds me of how when one side effect of existing in the world as a trans woman is that I feel like, especially at the beginning when I was a little clockier, you know, but I wasn't always the beautiful passing woman you see before you, like, but
I love it.
people would be confronted with the fact that I'm living my truth, and they would have to ask themselves whether or not they're living theirs. I could see them processing that in their head.
It is.
Yeah.
You know?
It's so aggressively clear when you watch that happen.
Yeah.
I also think we're just fighting against
real.
a lot of forces that, again, speaking to the way people are siloed informationally, like, it is so much more beneficial to, like, the media class and the ruling class that, like, I think that, like, the average poor liberal leftist has so much more in common with the average poor Republican conservative than anyone with money. Yeah. Like, and the biggest fear of any of these things is any semblance of class consciousness at all. Yeah. And so every bit of power that is directing media, is directing those things, is leaning into that division so that you don't get any deeper into it.
It is really about class consciousness at the end of the day.
It really is about class consciousness at the end of the day, isn't it? And that's like, that's the thing about, like, I think sometimes people try and frame trans and queer issues as, like, my antenna go up whenever people try and frame it as, like, a bourgeois thing, you know, and it's like something that it's a trope in movies too. Like, I love the Hunger Games. I think that the Hunger Games is one of the few, like, it has good politics.
You're talking sort of to the right people, because me and James fucking love the Hunger Games.
I fucking love the Hunger Games.
I think they kind of maybe radicalized me at a very early age a little bit, where I was like, well, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And this is something I noticed in the Wicked movie too. Like, one of the small problems I had, very small problems, don't worry, like, with that, with, like, Hunger Games, is that there were, like, visibly queer people in Panem or whatever, right? And same with, like, Oz, the city of Oz or whatever, the Emerald City.
Only the bourgeoisie were the visibly queer people.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
So
I never would have put that together, but yes.
And to some extent, there is truth there, because like, as like, liberal societies will allow more queerness as they feel more safety, and then they will begin, you know, queer people are, like, some of the first to go, you know, but it also may fuel this idea that, like, oh, transness is a certain bourgeois identity.
Oh, that's so interesting.
You know?
Yeah, when you look at
something
to look out for. Yeah, I never would have put that together, but that is so true in both of those movies, that, like, only in those cities we see the poor, like, we see the Munchkins, and we see District 12 and District 13, and we're not seeing any visible queerness except for in the capital.
Exactly.
That's also how media frames progressive liberal nations, where it's like, here we are with our, like, the U.S. is so progressive, we allow queer people to be here. Like, Israel is so progressive, we allow queer people to be here.
Exactly.
We are a shield from all these other places. It's
pinkwashing.
Yeah.
The pinkwashing of it all. Yeah. You're so, that they'll paint.
It's a shield to hide all of the shitty things we're doing. Like, it's like, oh, the U.S. allows for queer people, so it doesn't matter that we're bombing these 17 countries.
They allow queer people here, so it doesn't matter that we're bombing queer people there.
Yeah.
What's the meme where it's like the bombers, the planes, and it's like the difference between the Trump and the Obama administration is there's
a rainbow on it.
A rainbow on the Democratic one.
Literally.
Yeah.
And that's, one thing that I feel some pride in with the trans community is like, it feels like transness was just like, there was a tweet that I saw recently. It's like transness, the American, project would rather destroy itself than accept trans people. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. I'm like, I do feel I feel some pride in the fact that like we haven't really been as assimilated as easily as like cis gay people.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's the embodied nature of transness.
Yes.
And for not for everyone, but it's like because it brings up these questions of like bodily autonomy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It's like I'm not gonna. For me, it's not like love is love, right? For me, it's like free healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, and it's so interesting to talk to people who don't, ask themselves any of these questions or refuse to sort of look in the mirror that's being shown to them often, which is like kind of shocking, I think. But
it's just crazy.
It really is crazy, and it's so good to have these kinds of conversations, I think, because especially on the pod, because like I feel like there has been such a span of people on very different not different journeys, but like different places in those journeys, and and you can really I think you can really tell in artists like where really genuinely liberated people versus the people who are really struggling to sort of look in the mirror there.
Yeah. And I also think that these perspectives and these point of views are not like, I was just on another podcast and we talked about, facial feminization surgery and just like surgery for like 10 minutes. Like there was a 10-minute clip that got clipped and put on TikTok, and that got like 1.3 million views. Like this like whole 10-minute clip. And I had
That's
people,
kind of crazy.
Yeah, I had a few people say to me like, I really appreciated your perspective. These were like mostly cis women. I think that everyone is fucking talking about transness except for fucking trans people in the media.
That's so crazy. That's really true.
Well, it is interesting though too. That is such like a weird media thing where they're like, oh, here on CNN today we're going to get like
five trans experts.
Yeah, five trans experts, and they're all like, or like here's
like,
a member of a church who like doesn't fuck with trans people. Right. What do you think about this bill? Meanwhile, you don't see like any trans people just get asked the question.
Literally.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So, independent media, like people talking about it on podcasts and stuff like that. It's like people want to hear this stuff. This is the thing. I feel like when people hear this, no matter where they are, like this is where I get like even like spiritual with it. I'm like, there is truth in this conversation. Like God is present. Get
a little woo with us, girl. No, I get it. I get
and
it.
I'm like, and you can't just like deny. I feel like people, I don't know. I feel like we just have to be like living as honestly as you can in as many ways as you can. Like is liberating other people in ways that you'll never know.
Oh, I completely agree. I just want to close, I guess, with just like, what are you wanting out of your artistic endeavors, like in the next, I don't know, it doesn't have to be like 5-year goal, obviously, but like, what's the dream? Like, what do you want out of your artistic career?
That is a really good question. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Buying myself time.
But even, I'll buy you a little more time, but just in the sense of, it sounds like you've really, in the last 3 to 4 years, centered in
gotten
crystal clear and focused.
Absolutely.
If you were looking at what does the next 3 months look like? Yeah. And what is the immediate goal?
Well, I want to get more of my work out there because people across the country just need good trans art right now. And for example, my solo show, it is, I think, a really, really good trans piece of theater. There aren't that many good trans pieces of theater. So many of them are written by cis people. Terrible shit. And it's all fucking garbage. Like, but I think mine is really, really good. And I think that it could provide some solace to people. So I want to work on getting my stuff out there, and even just more
Very cool.
stand-up clips. And
Where
things like that.
what stage of development is that solo show right now?
The show is pretty much figured out. I just have to figure out how to produce it.
Okay.
Mm.
And what's the length of it?
About 70, 80 minutes.
Cool. And what is the ideal presentation format?
I think what I'm thinking in my head right now is doing a weekend of shows or 2 weeks of shows or something like that, and filming like the second weekend of shows,
Mm-hmm.
getting a real nice cut together, and then putting that on YouTube.
And what how, are you doing that show actively and refining it, or how is the development process for that? Is it bits and pieces?
Well, bits and pieces. I've been performing at stand-up shows for the
Okay.
past, 3 or 4 years, and I would do the show maybe once a quarter or so, and add in a new song, add in a new element, like refine the script. It's basically a book musical at this point. And basically it started as a cabaret, and then it became a comedy hour, and then it became a book musical.
Sick.
And it basically the whole hour is music in the mirror.
I love it.
It's
Cool.
like I'm at an audition, I'm trying to get them to give me this job. It's like a cis woman director, and I'm a trans woman, and I am singing my songs being like, oh yeah, I can show you another one, that type of
Cool.
vibe.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's called Esther Updates Her Book.
That's really cute.
Hell yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of stand-up comedians now, if you look at like Stavros or like Mary Beth Barone, a lot of people are putting their hours just on YouTube, and then it gets a lot of traction.
Sick.
And that is, I think, what I need to do with this, because there are people that just need to see it.
Yeah.
I don't
Absolutely.
care about it making money right now.
Well, it is the new wave too. I think
unless
like
producers care.
it is amazing. Like so
If
much
anyone
of where my brain is right now is just the power of audience. And
Yeah.
once people see it and get to know you and
Yeah.
get to know what you can do, and once you can harness that audience, that's where the money comes from.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so even if you know you have something that is really you believe in is good and can get it out to just as many people as possible,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where the pathways open up. And it's like you don't know what
Yeah.
jobs, money, whatever could come from that.
I totally agree. Yeah.
If there are
Where
any
can pe-
producers
Oh yeah.
listening to the pod and want to produce Esther's show, drop a comment.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at Instagram and TikTok and Blue Sky at Esther Fallick on all of them.
We love consistent branding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
easy.
easy
My name.
peasy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was
Yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah, this was great.
I've been wanting to spend time with both of y'all, so
Yay!
Yeah.
we did it.
We did
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have
That's-
any?
oh.
Sorry. Do you have any shows coming up?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know exactly
you
when
wanna
this will
promote?
air, but
Nothing that I can. Well, I'll be at Joe's Pub with Jennifer.
it. Oh, amazing.
I think March 13th. Don't quote me on that, but
Okay.
do look at Instagram.
early to mid March.
Early to
Esther
mid
Fallick
March.
and Joe Pub.
Joe's Pub.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
That's glass slipping for the day.
Slay.